Hello, this is Margarita Monet from Edge of Paradise, and you are listening to the Metal Pit Podcast.
Welcome to the Metal Pit Podcast, where we delve deep into the albums and bands that shaped metal. Please visit our website, The Metal Pit, at www.themetalpit.org, where you can find album reviews, interviews, and live show reviews. Also, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Metal Pit. And for some video interviews, some video shorts, and audio versions of this podcast, please visit our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com at The Metal Pit 666. I am your host, Blake, and tonight I have the same crew I had on our last episode where we talked about Annihilator's Alice in Hell. And so I have with me Billy, Kenneth, and Jim. How are you guys tonight?
Well, we're good. Ready to go, sir.
All good.
And
Awesome.
We're still talking thrash, I guess.
Absolutely. The best genre ever, my friend.
Now, if this happens to be your first episode listening to us, please check out many episodes. What I think we're at 31 or 2 or something like that now. And we've talked many classic metal albums, many thrash albums. But this one, I guess I haven't mentioned it yet. But we're going to be talking about Testament. So this is the first Testament album we've done. And we're going to learn from the album title, and we're going to practice what you preach. Okay, this is 1989. This album came out. First, a little bio on Testament. Of course, American thrash metal band from California, formed in 1983. Used to be called Legacy, but changed their name to Testament. So they named their first album Legacy. Correct? Right? I think that's right. Or The Legacy.
Correct.
Let's see. They have, where is that? Well, the current lineup today, or at least as far as I know, we still have Chuck Billy, of course, on vocals, Eric Peterson on the guitar, Alex Skolnick on the guitar, bassist Steve Giorgio, and drummer Chris Dovas, or Dovas, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Let's see, just kind of like Annihilator, but not as bad. But Testament has had many lineup changes as well, but they've always had the same singer, of course. And also, which one is it? Skolnick or Peter? No, Peterson's been in it every album, I think, since the start. Correct? I think, yes. And let's see. And the original singer was, of course, Steve Zetro Souza, who joined Exodus before Testament even released an album, but he did appear on their re-release album, which is called First Strike Still Deadly. And he's on 2 of those songs. I think he does guest vocals, I guess, on 2 of those songs. And I think he wrote one of these songs on this album that we're doing, at least one of them. Or I could be one of my top 10 songs, or I'm getting confused. Anyway, let's first, before I talk about the album, I guess we'll ask about what we're going to do. Practice what you preach. What I said, 1989. When did you guys first discover Testament, or maybe this album? Like, this is their third album? So, Jimmy, when did you first hear Testament or this album?
Well, this album I actually bought on a school trip in Montreal. This, along with the Voivod, because I got it up there while I was traveling with a school. My last year of high school, and I had the Legacy already, and I mean, this was probably the one that had me go back and buy the New Order, which is another awesome album. It's a great album. I mean, I think it was in my top 10. I think it was somewhere in there, and I mean, it's a phenomenal album. It's a lot of people compare it to like a thrashy version of what made them popular, kind of like the Black Album from Metallica, but this one's much better in my opinion. But that's when I first listened to them, was there.
Billy, how about you?
Yeah, I was probably I'm gonna guess just after the New Order came out, so it was before Practice What You Preach. Practice What You Preach is the first time I saw them live. But yeah, so I would say I discovered Testament in between those two albums, two fantastic albums.
And Ken, what about you?
Yeah, this is Practice is the first album that I actually bought. I bought it the first week it came out, and I know this because a week later in August, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 came out, The Dream Child, and I was such a huge like horror fan, and I was just at that point in time getting ready to go to college, art school, and I loved the album cover. And I saw it. It captured my attention, and I bought it right away. So it's came out just at the time when I was really into like horror, metal at the same time. So yeah, it was my big. I mean, I'd heard of the Legacy, I'd heard of the New Order, but this is the first album I actually bought. And then, of course, I went back and bought the first two, like not long after that.
And for me, I did get the first album. Well, so I guess I've been listening to it since their first album, but I can't really recall why. But it was 1987. I was already into Metallica and stuff before that. So I can't really recall if I just heard here's another thrash band or if I heard a song. I can't recall that, but I definitely, looking at the song list of the first album, I definitely know I used to listen to that one a lot, like with The Haunting and Curse of the Legions of Death and all those songs. So yes, I've been there since the start, and of course I would have bought everything since. I'm pretty much, I think. So Practice What You Preach, as I said, is the third studio album released in August 1989 via Atlantic and Megaforce Records. Now, this album, it was a breakthrough kind of, but a lot of some fans didn't like it, because there's a ballad on this album, which happens to be called The Ballad. And that's kind of what you're saying, Bill or Jim, about Metallica's Black Album, even though Metallica had a ballad before that. But I mean, this is kind of where their fans got some fans. I don't think that many, because they still stayed heavy throughout. Well, till today, they're still heavy, I guess, and still thrashy, and they even kind of got a little death. But we can probably talk about that later. Now, the funny thing, because, sometimes they do that set list thing about how many times they played it live. I'm not going to get into all that, but I did read that they don't play these songs live very much, except Practice What You Preach. They play a lot. They've played that almost 1,000 times. But, oops, that's not what I went. But some of these some of these songs, they haven't even played them like 50 times live, and it's kind of strange, because you think playing, going on that tour, they would have played them more than that many times. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I can certainly, based on my experience, I've seen Testament, I'm going to say 33, 34 times over the years.
Wow.
And most of these songs are not played. Like, I think a couple were played on the tour for this album, like back when they were with Annihilator. But yeah, Practice What You Preach is a staple. It's there like almost every single show.
Yes.
But rarely is the rest of this stuff played in the last sort of decade, for sure, probably longer.
Yeah, it shows like Sins of Omission has been played 191 times, Greenhouse Effect 71, and the rest is under 50. Even the ballad, I thought the ballad might have been something they would have played a lot, since it was new for them.
Yeah,
they've only played that 35 times, it says. And one of the songs is probably the instrumental they've never played live, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, they never played it live.
Yeah. No. Wow, 35 times, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, just on the last tour, I got to see them 3 times. Just because, when I was living in the U.S., I was able to see them in Philly, New York, and Baltimore, which are all like an hour train ride from where I live. So it's easy to do that.
Okay, so the lineup on this album was, of course, Chuck Billy on vocals, the same guitarist as we have now, right? Eric Peterson and Alex Skolnick, and on bass was Greg Christian, and the drummer was Louis Clemente. And that name sounds like a baseball player to me, but okay. Okay, so I guess we can just get on to the songs then. So let's start with, of course, the title track is the first song, Practice What You Preach. Billy, then.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it, right? Like this is really a staple of the live show. Like it's just a great track to sing along with. The audience always loves it. Does his practice what you preach, and certainly the audience shouts preach back. It's always a great, memorable part of every concert. But again, this song, like many of the other tracks, definitely have evolved versus the first two albums. We get more melody, far more hooks. We still get thrash, and there's still intensity. But I guess I view it as just they just continue to mature in the songwriting, and so just amazing stuff, and a super call out to the guitar solo that kicks in this song at about the 2 minute mark. And it practically goes to the 4 minute point of the song. Alex solos are just fantastic in this song. Eric sort of hooky riff to the chorus. Just a brilliant song. I love it. One of the best on the album, in my opinion.
And sorry, Jim. Sorry.
Yeah, just to kind of go on that. I mean, this has got a perfect spot on the album. Like Billy said there, it's probably, I would say, it's probably one of the most popular kind of mainstream. It was played in such heavy rotation on MTV and Much Music. Definitely, it's a great track. I mean, it just, again, where it is on the album, it just lights it up. And I think it's awesome. And I mean, this album, this was I think their first album that cracked Billboard 200 at like number 77, and it stayed there for like 12 weeks on, to hit that. So that's a big accomplishment. And I agree with Billy where the songwriting and actually the production went from the Legacy, kind of went a step up, on the next album, The New Order. And then on this, they really kind of hit the ground running with it for sure. It's great track. One of my favorite tracks too. Probably maybe my top 3 on this album. It's awesome.
And Kenneth, anything to add on Practice What You Preach?
Yeah, it's you have to realize that this is the first song that kind of veers the band away from what they had started out with on the first two. So obviously, this whole album is dripping with like political thoughts about society, and this is the first song that does that. So it's taken from scripture. So of course, practice what you preach, and don't be doing something that's contradictory. So it's definitely a strong song. I would agree that it's out of this album, it's one of the stronger songs on the album itself.
And yeah, it's one of my I'm not going to add much about the songs probably again since we have 4 people, but yes, this is probably my favorite song on this album. And by the way, at the end of when we get this at the end of this podcast, we're going to do our top 10 Testament songs of all time. And so we'll see if any of these songs appear on people's top 10 list. Anyway, next song is Perilous Nation. How about Billy then?
So just again, I would say more of the maturity that we saw coming off of Practice What You Preach. Really like the cool bass intro by Greg. Greg doesn't get a lot of standout moments on the album or in the band, I would say, when he was there. But, that's a cool part. Really like Chuck's vocals on this one. Very addictive. He shows a wide range again. A good mix of melodic, clean singing and more aggressive thrash. The music obviously following a similar approach. Just another good mature song. I wouldn't say I like it as much as Practice What You Preach, but just a good strong song on the album. And again, reflecting the maturity the band's at on this third album.
And Kenneth?
This song is, I like this song a lot too. For me, again, this is like a new thing for the band, especially for Chuck Billy to start writing about the idea of totalitarianism and warning you of it, and also warning you of the idea of, like, at least championing the idea of having free speech. Um, and also don't follow leaders who will lead you astray. So in terms of lyrically, for me, I like the song a lot. Again, it's a nice follow up to Practice in my mind, and I know they have played this. I did read that they do play this song often, not as often as they should, but it is a song that follows nicely right after Practice.
And Jim?
Yeah, I think the position on the album is great. You have that bass intro that starts up like Billy said, and I agree with Kenneth hits it spot on. I mean, the first two albums, especially the first album, was heavily focused on more of the occult. This is definitely going in a different way for their writing, and and definitely, obviously, it worked out for them. Those crunchy guitars are great. I mean, it's got a great guitar solo in it, and the riff is just really catchy. It's not one of my favorites on here, but it's a great song. Definitely a good second song to head into the next song for sure.
And yeah, with you guys talking about these first two songs, it's still heavy and it's still thrashy. It's just a little slower, kind of like what Metallica did, but they didn't. Well, Metallica's fifth album isn't thrashy really, but it's slower, but it's still heavy at times. But because this is their third album in 3 years, so it's kind of funny how they did change their sound, even though they made the album so quickly, one after the other. But anyway, then we go to song number 3, Envy Life. And I'll start with Kenneth, since you know something about the lyrics.
The song, this song basically starts out with a really good growl, which I think really sets the tone for the song. It's heavy as fuck for right off the get-go. And basically, as I was saying before our podcast started, it's about a warning about invoking spirits that would lead you astray. So it's like the opposite of anything that you would have heard on album 1 and album number 2. So basically, it just warns you about making pacts with any supernatural entity. For me, but as a song itself, it's a great song. I love it. I love it in the order. It's catchy as hell. Very, very heavy, and I like it at the number 3 spot for me.
And Jim.
Yeah, it's a great song. This is my second favorite on the album. I mean, it's great vocals. Has kind of that, that kind of, you can compare it a little bit to maybe a Hetfield sort of verse to it, where it just, he gets into that Envy Life, and it just sounds so cool. I mean, it's a great thrash song, and I believe it was one of the singles released at the time. So I mean, this got a lot of airplay as well, and I thought, for a song to be, the first 3 songs on this album, like you said, are still thrashy compared to maybe, well, not necessarily by 89, but going into the 90s. And that's what I love about Testament. I'm sure we'll talk about this later, is that they kept kind of the same sort of thrash formula as from album to album, and I really like that. There isn't a ton of compromise there necessarily, and this is definitely evidence of that. You can be thrashy and you can be popular at the same time.
And Billy?
Yeah, probably for me, this ranks a bit more in the middle. I do find it a bit interesting in the song. We actually do get an early death growl from Chuck on this tune that comes through. So maybe an early sign what he was thinking a few albums down the road. But probably if I have a pet peeve, I don't remember if it's the chorus or the lead up to the chorus, but like one thing that just hasn't aged well for me is sort of the backing vocals, where they sort of shout the whoa, oh, and then that keeps coming up. Like I don't know, I find that a little bit cheesy, and I don't think it's aged well. But maybe a minor complaint. And like I also don't think Alex's solo. Probably a little underwhelming relative to what he's done on many of the other tracks on this album. So for me, it's kind of middle of the pack, to be honest.
Yes, I like his little death growl, or whatever you want to call it, when he does the Envy Life part. Yes. Now, the next one, I don't know about you guys, but I think my life has gone to hell as we're going to talk about Time is Coming, which is actually one of my favorite songs on this, but I'll let Jimmy talk about this one.
Oh man, yeah, this is in the top half of the album for sure, and I find it severely underrated. I like it. I mean, that verse that the time is coming, where they just continue hitting it over and over again. It's great. This is fast, and I mean, it's got some absolute killer guitar riffs in it. I like it a lot. It's in my top half of the album, and I think it's a bit underrated, and I'm sure. I've only seen Testament twice, but obviously I would have loved to seen this play, and I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure they didn't play this song at either of those shows.
And let's go, Billy, next.
Yeah, I agree with Jim. I would probably rank it higher. It's a top three for me. Um, I love the track. I mean, this is just right in the wheelhouse of the Testament's songwriting for this album, right? Thrashy, but still melodic and catchy as hell. I mean, that chorus is like a total earworm. Like it sticks with you when you hear it, and it's one of those tracks that still kind of gets me headbanging to this day when I'm listening to it. So yeah, I love it. I think it's great, and also I'd call out Louis' drum work on this one. This and Blessed in Contempt, I think are his two standout drumming tracks on the album. But yeah, Time is Coming, top three track for me.
And did everybody say something? Yes, it did. Sorry. Sorry, I'm getting confused with the three people here as my guests. But yeah, I also like the chorus on Time is Coming because, yes, it is catchy and it's kind of funny. You think a thrash metal band has catchy chorus, but yeah, it is, even though it's not saying like that. Then we go to Blessed in Contempt. I don't have anything about this one.
Could I just say something about it?
Yes.
Again, I go back to the lyrics because I always like listening to lyrics and songs. Chuck wrote this song himself, and basically it's about his frustrations about society. So he wanted to make some observations about how there was corruption in the police force and how cops were taking bribes, how the idea of taxes, how the country was heavily taxed at the time. And so he wanted to bring to light a lot of stuff like that on the song, from what I read and what I know of the song.
Okay, sorry, I forgot you didn't speak about the song yet, Ken.
Yeah, no worries, no problem.
Okay, then we go to Blessed in Contempt, and I'll start with Billy on this track.
Yeah, so here we're getting into Time is Coming, Blessed in Contempt, and the title track are my three favorite by far on the album. This reminds me more of the first two albums, a little bit more, probably the most intense song, more of a full-on thrash attack. Chuck's vocals are outstanding here, heavy and aggressive, and I think I mentioned it, Louis. This is probably his heaviest drumming on the album. We keep saying it, but the hooks within this thrash style of writing are just fantastic, and just more brilliant Alex and Eric guitar work. So for me, easy top three song on the album.
And Kenneth?
Yeah, the one thing I liked about this song mostly is the vocals, and it's almost it's very eerily uncanny that he sounds a lot like James. There's a little bit of a snarl here, and that's the same kind of snarl that James had on a lot of the earlier Metallica records. So you get it here, which I like. So it really amplifies the whole kind of vibe of the song itself. And Billy also wrote this song as well. So again, it's more about his personal struggles, or at least I'm not sure if it's his struggles, but the idea of struggles of darkness, of people who veer to the dark side. So yeah, it's another song that I think comes across really well, just based on I maybe he's wrote something about his past or someone he knows. But I always like this song. I the vocals especially for me.
And Jim?
Oh, this is my favorite song on the album, and I mean it's one of my favorite thrash songs So it'll probably, maybe, I don't want to give it away, but maybe make my top 10. But I mean, it's awesome. This is what Testament is all about. I mean, you got you're halfway through the album, and then you just hit with this buster that just smashes right in. I mean, it's fast. It's just wicked, and the drums on it are great. I mean, that just pounds right through you. It's a great song, and like I say, this is the calling card of Testament. So, like, as we compare this, kind of every tends to compare it to the Black Album. You know, the Black Album doesn't have anything like this on it, or like many of the other songs that are before. Yeah, there's some that are a little bit slower in that, but they still keep to that same formula. And this song just blows that away, and I really, really like it. So I think for casual fans at the time, maybe who are thinking, you know, they bought it for maybe the top couple of singles on it, or even the ballad, you know, this would be just something they kind of got in there to just really kind of get you hooked into maybe the first two albums. And that's, I think it's super smart. And I think it's great to always include stuff like this, regardless of which way you go. And, you know, and Testament does have definitely going down the line in a few more years, a lot more heavier, kind of maybe darker album. So this is really, really cool.
And I was also thinking when I was re-listening to this album, I was hearing like some James Hetfield in his vocals too. So I was glad you said that, Kenneth. So that I do think I do know something, I guess, huh? Or at least we know something. And the next track is Greenhouse Effect. And this, of course, is about the environment, something they wouldn't sing about in the first two albums, which they kind of mentioned with one of the other songs. So, Jim, you start with Greenhouse Effect.
Yeah, this is a great song. Another one that is popular. I mean, I think this was one of maybe the second single that was released, I believe. You know, really, really good song. You know, it's about environmental holocaust. So I like it a lot. I mean, great guitar, just a great strong song. And again, when they place these songs on the album, this is another one that's got a great spot. And I mean, you know, I wouldn't, coming up to track 6 here, Greenhouse Effect, I wouldn't move anything around. So far, I kind of, you've got the singles in there, you've got the heavy hitters right off the bat, and you're kind of passing through the middle of the album now. It's got a great spot on there.
Kenneth?
Yeah, the song is really, really strong as well. I think this is a song that shines for Alex because I know he wrote the lyrics and he wrote the music, so he really gets to be the spotlight on the song. And the one thing about this album that I've noticed is that on certain songs you can see where each individual musician kind of shines, and I think Greenhouse is a song that, for me, Alex shines the most. Although it's funny, I always thought that maybe Chuck would have written this song because it seems like all the songs that he's written on this album are all like a lot of political and societal observations. But Alex does a really good job on this song. I think the riffs are great. This is a really good song overall.
And Billy?
Yeah, I think the guy sort of covered it. Maybe just a slight tangent observation, but I guess environmental songs in thrash were a bit of a thing in 1989 because I guess you had Nuclear Assault on Handle with Care the same year with their Critical Mass, another sort of environment type track in thrash. So environmental track. So yeah, it was obviously within the minds of a few thrash bands in 1989.
And with that song and with the next one, I just wrote down for myself. They're still good songs, but they're just not my. I don't know. They don't really do anything really special for me, which we'll probably find out when I rate the album because this isn't my favorite Testament album. But it's not like I don't like it. I still like it. I'm just saying it's not up at the top of my Testament albums. But then we go to Sins of Omission and Kenneth. What about this one?
Yeah, this is their first like big attempt at Christianity, so they wanted to take a knock to it. Obviously, Sins of Omission refers to the idea that you know the idea that you're committing to a sin, like you spot a sin or you see something of a sin that you would see, but don't do anything about it. So that's where they act because you don't act upon doing anything about that sin or trying to stop it, then you commit that sin. I know this. I know it. I sort of know where it's taken from. James 4:17 is where they took it from. So again, it's interesting that now they're veering from society and politics and going into religion. So I guess it goes hand in hand for all the lyrical content on this album in general. And it's great because there's the lead off is really good. The riffs are great. Billy's fantastic on the song as well. I also like the trade off in solos with both Alex and Peterson and Skolnick. They do a really good job on this song. Everyone seems to be all firing and on all cylinders here.
And Billy?
Yeah, I actually had many of the same points on this song. I would probably place it in the top 4 on the album. I've always been a big fan of this one. I do believe they played this the first time I saw the band. Holds up still well today in 2023. I think it's a great song, and once again, like we've said many times, just a good example of the more mature songwriting and mixing the thrash with more melody and hooks. Great one, love it.
And Jim?
Yeah, I agree with what the guys have said. I mean, I think this is one of the heaviest tracks on the album, and again, like Billy just said, was with their maturity, with their songwriting, and how the album's developed from one to this third one. You can see definitely a change, and not much else to say. I mean, they've pretty much covered everything on this one. It's a great track, great track.
And now, as I've kind of mentioned this before, but for people who love ballads, they had to make sure they put on a ballad, and then they called it the ballad. And I'm sure if Metallica didn't I don't know, I know Metallica had some earlier ballads like Fade to Black or semi-ballads or whatever, but I kind of think one kind of made it bands and thrash say, well, it's okay to have a ballad, or again, a semi-ballad, whatever you want to call it. But so where am I starting? Billy, what do you think of the ballad?
Yeah, so I gotta be honest, hands down, my least favorite song on the album, and I'm not a ballad hater. I mean, I think of some, thrash bands in the same time, Death Angel, and they're pure ballad. A room with a view, love that song. So I don't hate ballads, and Chuck Billy is probably my favorite live singer of all time, but I just don't think his voice matches ballad style singing. It does nothing for me. I completely dislike it. But that said, there are some cool guitar parts. Alex has that cool acoustic intro and more melodic solo that comes. But I do like that it does build heavier and more intense towards the last sort of 2 minutes. But at the longest song in the album, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. I'm not a fan.
Kenneth?
Yeah, I like the acoustic opening is good. I know I was reading that some bands have looked at this album or looked at this song in particular on 2 fronts. That is there's a breakup song, so there's a song about breaking up, and then some are even saying that, well, it could be a little bit about looking at suicide or attempting or thinking about suicide. So that's kind of interesting. It's not my favorite song either. I don't hate it. It's all right for what it is. I think where it shines for me is the acoustic beginning. I like a lot. For me, Billy, this is a song that at least the lyrics are trying to tell you that it's very emotional, but Billy doesn't really come across. It's not Billy's strong suit. Let's just put it that way. So what Billy said was right. Like Chuck doesn't come across the way that he should. But it's an okay song. It's not in my top 5 or anything on this album either.
Jim, do you hate it too?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this. I mean, as much as I respect Testament and Chuck Billy, I just don't think it's not in his wheelhouse. It's just, I think this was sort of unfortunately for me, maybe a try at something like a Fade to Black, but Fade to Black is just, I mean, it just kills. It's awesome. But, and I don't even count that technically as a ballad. I mean, it's, or even, but like, it just doesn't do anything for me. I mean, I get it. It's a sensitive song, and hey, I can be a sensitive guy, but this just, I mean, it just doesn't hit it for me. And again, the acoustic sounds great, as Kenneth said. And I think that maybe, I don't know, they maybe just should have just made it a heavier song and just went with another thrash song. And I don't mean to cop out, hey, and I think, Billy made some good points there with Death Angel and that. You can pull it up, but I just don't think his voice can do it. And I don't think it's made for that. And it doesn't, it's one I definitely, when it comes on, I mean, whatever. I don't necessarily listen to it. It maybe be a skip over for me. And usually I'm pretty complimentary of everything, but it's just not my cup of tea.
Okay, well, this is funny because I'm going to disagree with all three of you.
Wow.
Because actually I was listening to a few. They don't have a lot of ballads, I guess, on the other albums. There is one other one that's going to appear in my top 10 list, but it's not this one. Because usually I don't like ballads. Like we talked about Annihilator last time, and they have all those sappy ballads, and I hate those, most of them anyway. But I like Chuck Billy's voice on the ballads. Maybe not this one, but the other one that I'm going to mention later. So I thought he kind of had a good voice for ballads, but I guess you guys totally disagree with me on that. But but that doesn't matter because we're always going to disagree on that. But it's not like it's my favorite song on the album, but I don't mind it. I probably don't skip it if I'm listening to the album. I don't mind it like you guys do, I guess. And the thing that you said about suicide, I did write down the line. I don't mind doing the time. I am happier being alive. Those two lines right there kind of made me think that it's about suicide too. About he doesn't want to commit suicide because he'd rather be alive. I don't know if that's where you kind of got it from too.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it as well.
Okay. Then we go to, or did you want to add something there, Jim?
Yeah, just Blake. So you're not a Motley Crue Home Sweet Home guy that curl up and just,
Well, I don't mind Home Sweet Home because it's on, I just watched Hot Tub, that Hot Tub movie where the guy does Home Sweet Home.
Hot Tub Time Machine.
Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't say, I like some Motley Crue songs, but Home Sweet Home isn't my favorite. Anyway, then we go to the shortest song, but probably maybe the fastest one. We'll see if you guys agree. Nightmare. It's only 2 minutes and 20 seconds. This probably should have been on Rain and Blood or something, but it's so short. But we'll start with Kenneth then on Nightmare.
Yeah, this is where Skolnick shines again. The riffs are great. I think they're fresh. They're strong. Basically, it's just a song about recurring nightmare. And it's a great song. I like it. It's perfectly timed for 2 minutes. It doesn't need to be any longer or shorter. And this is a great song.
And Jim?
Well, after waking up from the ballad, I mean, this is just an awesome song. I agree with you. I wrote down in my notes that it kind of has a Slayer feel to it because it's so short. And I mean, I think it could fit on any one of those out. It's a great song. Great song. So now you're awake, you're going for it, you're hitting the end of the album. I think it's got a perfect place on the album.
And Billy?
Yeah, I think the first thing I had in my note is thank God it picked up after the dreadful ballad. That's exactly the same as Jim there. So good fast track stands out to me. I mean, it's only 2 minutes, so obviously it's not evolving as some of the 4 and 5 minute tracks elsewhere on the album. I do get a little bit of a punk feel in a small way to the song, but hands down for me, the song what sells it is Skolnick's soloing, as Ken said. That's a standout for me, for sure.
Yes, and then we finish with a instrumental called Confusion Fusion. And Jim, what do you think of the instrumental? I guess we'll talk about the instrumental this time.
I think it's good, and I think they should have. I would have loved it if this was like an actual. They would have added definitely singing to it. I think they should have upped the game and just went for it. I mean, it's a great track. It's got a killer bass line again in it, and I mean, I like it. I like the track, and but I kind of wish it would have been throw Chuck Billy's. Maybe make the ballad just the instrumental and maybe a minute 30 long. That's how I would have switched.
Okay, Billy.
Yeah, so I enjoy it as an instrumental. Always liked them. I find it even funky and jazzy at times, which is again right in Alex's wheelhouse. Given he has his own jazz band, so all that's good. I guess for me, I'll go back to the four of us this time last week, talking about Annihilator and the last track on the album, Human Insecticide, and Going Out with a Bang, and sort of an intense song. So for me, this is a bit of a disappointment. I like it, but stick it up in the middle and bring me either Nightmare to end this thing, or bring me a Blessed in Contempt as the ending song. But to end it with a instrumental song, that throws me off a bit. Like it's not. I don't think it's in a good spot to end a thrash album. But just my opinion.
And Kenneth.
Yeah, what Billy said is right. I mean, I like the song as well, but where it's placed, especially you get this really fast song in Nightmare, and then you get this, so it's a little bit of a letdown. It's playful. Oddly enough, it does kind of remind me a bit of Annihilator song, just because it's all over the map. There's a little bit of jazz fusion. There's a little bit of it's funky at times, is what Billy was saying earlier. The other thing for me that I do like about the song is I love Louis Clemente's drums on this, because I find that his drumming style here, he really controls the pace, especially because you got Greg on bass, and you've got both Peterson and Skolnick trading off on riffs. So it's in terms of the way the song is structured, it's good. It's a good song, but as the ending song, it may not be the best way to end off the album.
And yeah, if you guys didn't bring that up, I was going to say, don't you find it odd that they put an instrumental at the end of the album? So we've already discussed that. So I guess I don't have to bring it up. But yeah, I think Nightmare would have been a better last song, just like Billy said. So that's the album, and we're going to rate it. And now, since you guys all hate the ballad, I can't see anybody giving it a 10 then. But anyway, I'm going to give it an 8. I'm going to go first. I gave it the same. I gave Annihilator's Alice in Hell an 8. I'm giving this one an 8 too. Billy, what would you give it out of 10 then?
Yeah, I'll go 8.5. Again, just on the strength of the good songs, they're so good. But yeah, it can't be a 10 with the ballad and some of the positioning of the final 3 tracks. Just kind of lets the album down a bit for me.
And Kenneth, what do you give it?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 9. I would agree what Billy just had mentioned. Yeah, the last 3 songs it does bring it down a little bit. It's a good album, a lot of really, really good songs for me, like songs that are going to be in my top 10, for sure. But I would think the last 3 songs it brings that score down from a 10 to a 9 for me personally.
And Jim, what do you give it?
I agree. It's this is the first time I'm going to give an album not a 10, so it's a 9 for me too. And I agree with what the guys said. I mean, the first 2 albums in my mind are 10s. This is popular, and I'm so glad that this album they kind of broke through to a different, more vast audience. Maybe even compare it to when Slayer did Seasons and kind of broke in a little bit more and had kind of videos and stuff like that. And maybe went a little bit more as mainstream as like this or a Slayer could do. This is what I think the blueprint for what the Black Album should have been. And I hate picking on the Black Album. And don't get me wrong, I like it. It's just, it was a real letdown. This is the type of album that probably should have been. But I agree with the guys. The ballad really kind of shoots at the foot for me to keep it from becoming a 10. And yeah, definitely the last track being an instrumental and not having a real just ball buster right at the end, because you love it when you finish an album and it leaves you wanting more because you hit that, it does kind of give it a little bit of a lukewarm feeling at the end for sure.
Okay, and I was going to mention, I guess I didn't mention this before because of the bio, but we can talk about this now because we're going to talk about the rest of they have 13 studio albums, and I believe they're working on a 14th studio album as far as I can tell. But one of those studio albums, First Strike Still Deadly, was just re-recordings of songs from their first two albums, including what I mentioned about Sousa appearing on two of them. Also, when I was reading about this, we kind of talked about this before about if we wanted to debate the big four thing with Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax. And then this site that I was reading said they thought they were part of the big eight, like if there was eight, and they mentioned Exodus, Overkill, Death Angel, and Testament. So do you guys want to comment on that, or maybe comment on what your favorite Testament album is, if this isn't it, or whatever you want to do here? Ken, you go first, maybe.
Okay, well, this is my favorite Testament album. For me, it's the one I identified mostly back in the 80s, from one that I really enjoyed. As part of being the big four, I mean, I don't know about the top eight for sure. I mean, the big four in this, they should definitely have been included in the top, like a top four or top five thrash metal bands, based on the fact that you had Skolnick, you had Peterson. Billy is an amazing vocalist, even though he even had cancer and survived that and still sounds amazing. In terms of all the thrash bands, he might still be the strongest vocalist currently in thrash for a guy his age, and still able to belt out those tunes. And again, like, Skolnick is such a great guitar player, and Peterson doesn't get enough credit because he's over the map too. He's got his sort of black metal band on the side. It's just yeah, to me they should easily be part of the big four. It should be the big five at least, and maybe the big six. I would include Exodus. For me, I think those top six bands really much made the genre the genre. Like, they really gave it, they're the hallmarks of the genre itself.
And Jimmy, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I think the big eight is a big part. I mean, that's a huge. I mean, that's a big chunk of the foundation of thrash and these bands. And, would I move it into the top four? Out of respect for the four bands that are there, no, because each one brings something different to the first four, but definitely in the top eight. And that top eight is, my top eight favorites. Where I would put them is probably maybe, I don't know. I'm a huge Death Angel fan, huge Exodus and Overkill fan. So I battle with where I would put them in there. But for consistency, definitely in the fifth spot, probably. I find, maybe them, but you could say the same thing about Overkill and about them all, I guess. But, and as far as my favorite album is the first, the Legacy, and then the New Order. I go back and forth. I really like kind of the rawness of the Legacy, and I like that in first albums. Like, Kill 'Em All is my favorite Metallica album, and a lot of people kind of what do you mean Ride's way better and it sounds better? Yeah, but I kind of like that sort of raw start. They're hungry, they're in there, but I mean, Practice is one of their top albums for me. I also like their newer stuff too. I mean, I think they've gotten stronger, and Demonic. I mean, a lot of Testament fans didn't like Demonic. It's got that real, death metal edge to it. I really like it. And I mentioned it on the podcast last week. I thought it would have been really cool where, Annihilator went through kind of like a little bit of a few albums that were, in the 90s, I think it was, where they were a little bit different. I would have liked them to make a really good stab at maybe doing a death metal project, like a real full album on that. But no, that's what I think about it. I think definitely in the top eight, and you can make arguments. Slayer's not around anymore; they've retired. So, and you look at it from maybe Metallica's newer albums are definitely not as consistent of where they started from. So, but I think the top four, I'd leave it the same, only out of respect for them. That's the way I feel.
And Billy.
Yeah, so favorite album for me, hands down, New Order. That's the easy choice for me. When it comes to the big four, big eight, it's a tough one, and we could probably do a whole podcast thinking through that. I mean, the whole concept of Big Four, Big Eight is maybe more, you know, because it's all U.S. focused, right? So you're eliminating the Big Four German bands. So I would easily put Creator ahead of most of that Big Eight. You're leaving out, early like Sepultura, which is just brilliant, and in my view, takes out some of the Big Four. So it's very much an Americanized view, which I think is maybe not the best way to look at it. But I guess the way I like to look at it is looking now 2023 and look at the careers of the bands. And I hear what Jim's saying, the respect for the Big Four, and I get that. And the Big Four may be in sales, who sold the most albums in the 80s. But one thing I'll say about Testament, if you look at consistency from beginning to end, I don't care, take the Big Four as it's known and look at their total career of music. Nobody's as consistent as Testament, and nobody's putting out as good music as they are today this long. So I think that has to be acknowledged. And if you're going to look back at the history of the band and the legacy and the discography, in my view, I don't see how Testament can't be in the Big Four, because those Big Four have many missteps, and Testament has one or two, but definitely not to the same degree. So if I look at it from that angle, Testament should be the Big Four, just if you're going to focus on American bands.
But even going back to the Big Four, like, who made the Big Four? Like, like
they did.
No, but I mean, wasn't Metallica? Didn't Metallica pick those bands out and say, let's go on a tour together? So they just called it the Big Four. Yeah, they're not necessarily saying it's the best four in thrash. I don't know. Maybe they are, but maybe they asked Testament, but they were busy doing a tour somewhere else. So they went, okay, well, we better get Anthrax in, and we better make up with Dave and have Megadeth come with us or something. I don't know. I don't really know. But if it was my choice for the Big Four, I would only keep Metallica from the original four. And I would have Testament, Overkill, and Exodus on instead, because I like those three bands better than the other three bands. But that's personal choice, right? That's why we're talking about all this stuff. And for me, for the albums, like, I like the first two albums better than Practice What You Preach, and I also like Low album a lot. But I think my favorite album is actually Dark Roots of Earth Earth.
Good choice.
In 2012, because I really like that one.
One of my favorite ones too.
Yes, because they're still making good albums today, or like the last one was 2020, and like I say, I think they're making another one this year. Okay, so now we're going to go to our top 10 Testament songs, and this wasn't very easy, and I didn't even get to listen to all of the albums to refresh my memory, but I think I got a good list here. But who are we going to start with? How about Ken? You want to give your top 10 Testament songs?
Yeah, like yourself, like, I didn't go back and listen to a lot of all the other albums either, but this is what I feel today. I mean, it could change tomorrow, but as of today, during this podcast, this is what I'm going with. So number 10, I'm going with Native Blood, because Dark Roots is an amazing album. I saw that tour live with Anthrax. It's such a great show. I think Billy kicks it on that song a lot. Of course, because of his Native American roots background. Number 9, I'm going to go with Dog Face Gods. I like Low. That song is actually pretty decent for me. Number 8, I'm going with Rise Up, another great song from Dark Roots of the Earth. And then at number 7, yeah, right. So number 7, I'm going to go with More Than Meets the Eye. I do like that song too. That was kind of the start of the return of the band from back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And of course, Skolnick returned to play guitar. That song I really, really like. It's kind of catchy for me. At number 6, I'm putting Blessed Contempt, which again we've talked about earlier. It's just a great killer song. Number 5, I'm putting Practice What You Preach. I love that song quite a bit. Then at number 4, I'm going with Over the Wall, another song that I really, really like from the earlier days of the band. At And then number 3, Into the Pit, which is one of my favorite Testament songs. It's a killer tune from start to finish. I'm gonna put NB Life at number 2, just based on the fact that I've had a chance to re-listen to the album again the last few days, and the song just sticks with me, so I'm sticking it there today. I could change tomorrow to something else, but who knows. And number 1 for me is Disciples of the Watch, which is a song that I totally love.
Okay, Jim then.
Okay, well, my number 10 for me starts off with Burnt Offerings from The Legacy. Love that song. Number 9, I think we had a couple there, Kenneth, that were the same, but different positioning. Disciples of the Watch from The New Order, my number 9, awesome song. Number 8, I went with Greenhouse Effect from Practice. Number 7, Murky Waters from Demonic. I love that album, and a lot of people, I think I posted it on my Facebook, and everybody just hated it. I absolutely love that album. Number 6, Dogface Gods from Low. That's my favorite song. That's a great album as well. Number 5, Night of the Witch from Titans of Creation. So another wicked track. Number 4, Native Blood from Dark Roots of the Earth. I love that. That's another great song. Number 3, Afterlife from Formation. Just as I hone into my top 2 here, number 2, Blessed in Contempt from Practice. And my number 1, which is one of my favorite thrash songs of all time, next to Blessed in Contempt, is Over the Wall from, it's just an amazing song. Love that song.
And Billy, your top 10?
Yeah, so top 10 is tough for Testament because, as we've talked about, so many great albums and very consistent. But I guess for me, it just comes down to, songs I've spent the most time with. There's definitely a nostalgia factor for when I discovered the band. There's no doubt about that. And then just songs I absolutely love hearing Testament play live. So, and some of these are not as played as often as others, but so number 10 for me, Sins of Omission. So we just talked about that from Practice album. Then I'm rolling into some of the death metal period. So DNR, Do Not Resuscitate from The Gathering. Love that track. And that's a killer live song. I've heard it many times, played at a Testament show. Number 8, Dogface Gods from Low. Great track again in the death metal style. Number 7, Blessed in Contempt from Practice What You Preach. We just talked about that. Into the Pit, The New Order, Practice What You Preach. Number 4, Trial by Fire from The New Order. Time Is Coming, number 3 from Practice. Number 2, I don't think anyone's mentioned this one yet, The Preacher. Just love that song, and it's killer when it's played live. And then number 1, I think I might have be in line with Ken here, but my absolute favorite Testament song, my absolute favorite Testament live song, Disciples of the Watch.
Well, because I just made my top 10 list not shortly before we started this, or I finished it off, that is, and Disciples of the Watch and Rise Up were 2 that I was going to include and I just didn't, and The Preacher was another one. So you guys mentioned 3 of those, and I can't believe I don't have Dogface Gods. We can't match that on all 4. I like that song, but it didn't make my list. But anyway, number 10, I got Day in the Death from Dark Roots. Number 9, I got True Believer from The Gathering. Number 8 is I got Return to Serenity, which is a ballad. That's the ballad I was talking about from The Ritual, which I don't think anybody else mentioned The Ritual. Did they at all? I don't think.
I didn't.
No.
Because I like that album a lot too. I forgot to mention that when I was mentioning the things. But anyway, number 7, I got Hail Mary from Low. Number 6, I have Agony, which is also from The Ritual. Number 5, I have The Haunting from Legacy. Number 4, I have Native Blood from Dark Roots. Number 3, I have All I Could Bleed from Low. Number 2, I have Alone in the Dark from Legacy. And of course, my number one Testament song since I run the Metal Pit is, of course, called Into the Pit.
There you go.
It's my favorite Testament song. I might even have stole the name from that. Maybe when I discovered the name, the Metal Pit, it was like, hey, I like Into the Pit. I don't know. Maybe not. Okay, I forgot to ask this about Billy mentioned about seeing them live like 35 times, and I forgot to do the thing of talking about seeing them live. So, Billy, I'll go back to you. Is there a favorite performance you've seen them do it live? Like of them?
Yeah, it's tough. I'll probably just go back to the first one. Just left just such a big impression. I mean, Testament always puts on a good show. They don't always put on a good meet and greet, but they always put on an amazing show. And just watching them since 1989 to as recent as 3 times on the tour last year. I've never walk away disappointed with them. So I'll just go with the first because it's the first time I heard them, but kudos that they always deliver a consistently good concert.
And Jim, you said you've seen them twice.
Yeah, I saw them twice. I mean, saw them. I'm pretty sure it would have been after Formation of Damnation, and I believe they opened. They took, I think, Machine Head spot because they had, I don't know, if one of them couldn't tour. Somebody, I think Machine Head couldn't tour for some reason, and they played the Seasons here in Halifax. They played with the Slayer and Megadeth co-headlining for the 30th anniversary shows of Seasons and Rust in Peace. So it was pretty cool starting them off. They didn't play very long. I think they only played like 8 songs, but it was, I mean, they absolutely got the fans going, and it was wicked. It was a great substitution in my mind. Really loved seeing them. And I saw them again after 2010, I believe. Again, I believe with Slayer. The last time I saw Slayer, they had opened, and I think maybe Suicide Silence was there as well, if I can remember right.
And Kenneth, have you seen them live before?
Yeah, I've seen them about 4 or 5 times. The last time I saw them was with Anthrax and Death Angel. That was a really good show in Toronto. I love that show, and they were doing at the time Dark Roots of the Earth. So that tour cycle was fantastic. It was a great show. That was the one that I really, really liked. I did also see them when, I guess this is before Mike Hanneman had passed away from Slayer, before he died of his of the alcoholism. So I seen that show with Megadeth, Testament, and Slayer, right? Thank you. Yeah, that was a really, really good show too. So yeah, every time I've seen them live, I've never been disappointed.
No, I've seen them a few times. I can't remember the number, but but I was at the one you just mentioned in Toronto with Death Angel and Anthrax. I was at that one. And then I seen them also with Death Angel, and I think Overkill was supposed to be there, but for some reason Overkill couldn't come. Now I can't remember if that was after the other one or before the other one. I can't remember, and I kind of think I seen them also with Slayer at one point too, but yes, they're always great live when I've seen them, the few times that I've seen them, but yes, they're always great live. Okay, so I guess we're done. Anybody want to add anything about this album or Testament or anything?
No, it's a great album. Go out and buy it if you don't own it, which I'm sure most metalheads have it, but if you don't have it, buy it.
Yes, and they should be in the big 4.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. Thanks all you guys, for joining me tonight. And thanks everybody for listening. So we're going to say goodbye. So make sure you check us out again at themetalpit.org for everything we got there for you to check out. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening.